Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa on France 24. I'm Vedika Bahel, and here's the top headlines from across the continent. Thousands of Malians have fled westwards to the border with Mauritania over the last 2 weeks, as a blockade by the Qaeda-linked JNIM group continues to isolate communities from supplies, food and fuel. Some have walked days to arrive there, many with their entire families in tow. We bring you the latest from the border. Despite renewed momentum to end violence in the DRC's east and solidify a peace deal between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda, progress remains slow, and on the ground the situation remains tense. Concerns remain that the peace process could fall through. And one legendary West African band celebrates its 50th anniversary. Orchestra Baobab from Senegal marked this massive milestone by kicking off a European tour. It's bringing audiences old and new into the fandom with a sound that has travelled decades. Thank you for joining us. We'll be starting this bulletin in Mali, where the situation has sharply escalated. An ongoing blockade by the Al-Qaeda-linked group JNIM has brought much of the country's economy to a standstill. This as fighting between non-state armed groups, the Malian army and their Russian-backed allies intensifies. Communities have been cut off from supplies, and in some towns, fighters are ordering entire villages to leave or be treated as the enemy, meaning hundreds of families continue to arrive at the Mauritania-Mali border. Well, our regional correspondent, Caitlin Kelly, reports from a makeshift camp between the countries. Let's take a listen.
Just a few kilometres from here lies extremist-held territory, where fighting between the Malian army, its Russian allies and armed groups has intensified in recent weeks. And now here on the Malian border with Mauritania, hundreds of refugees are fleeing the violence. In late September, the Al-Qaeda-linked group JNIM announced it was cutting off fuel supplies to Mali, setting up checkpoints on main roads to stop fuel from reaching the cities and effectively crippling the country's economy. Around 20 kilometres from this point on the border, in villages like Lere, family describe living under blockade, with food and supplies cut off by the group. Refugees I've spoken to say JNIM ordered entire villages to leave, giving residents just a couple of days to leave or face life under their rule or even death. Others told me they fled attacks from the Malian army and its Russian allies, Africa Corps, reporting drone strikes and ground attacks less than 30 kilometres from here. Some described their whole villages burnt and family members killed before their eyes.
On one side of us were the jihadists, and on the other, Wagner. In the past, we could hide, but now it's not possible. The girl sat next to me. Her father was taken, and we've had no news since.
We hate Wagner for coming into our country, for slaughtering us on our own land without having done anything to deserve it.
In the past 2 weeks alone, more than 1,600 people have arrived here at this border point in Mauritania as the situation next door worsens, joining over 300,000 refugees already displaced into this region.
We are all scared. Our souls are not at peace because we are dying every day. We saw we were in danger of dying, so we decided to leave.
We left everything we owned behind, and we can't go back to recover any of it.
Many believe this is Mali's most critical moment since 2012, as fighting across the country between the army, its Russian allies and insurgents has already displaced millions. As one refugee described it to me, Mali has become a no-go zone.
Staying in Mali, according to local sources and state television there, a woman who regularly praised the country's army on TikTok has been abducted by armed men and executed. Malian state television network ORTM said Mariam Cissé, who had nearly 100,000 followers on the platform, was kidnapped Thursday in the northern town of Tonka before being shot dead by her captors. The area is contested between the Malian army and the JNIM insurgent group. No group has claimed responsibility. Let's head now to the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where there's renewed momentum to reach a peace deal and end the M23 rebel conflict, with the US taking on a heavier role alongside Qatar and the African Union. There are still fears, though, that the peace process stands on a knife edge, as despite the efforts to recommit, violence continues on the ground. Our correspondent in Kinshasa, Emmett Livingston, brings us the latest.
After weeks of stasis, there is some movement in the peace process for Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as hopes for more progress soon, although those hopes are faint. On Friday, Congo and Rwanda initialed an economic integration initiative, which is meant to link the two countries on energy, infrastructure and investments. This initiative is part of an overall peace deal between Congo and Rwanda, which both countries have been slow to implement. In a joint statement, the countries admitted to lagging progress, but said that they would redouble their efforts. According to some officials, Congolese President Félix Tshisekedi, as well as his Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame, were expected to travel to Washington as early as this week for a ceremony, but nothing is confirmed. Meanwhile, the negotiations between the Congolese government and the M23 are at an impasse, with the rebels unwilling to surrender. Observers say that a comprehensive peace deal is unlikely anytime soon. And on the ground, it's as tense as ever. Over the weekend, the Congolese army said that the M23 launched a wave of attacks last week in violation of the peace process.
The toll of post-electoral violence remains unclear in Cameroon, just days after the world's oldest ruler, Paul Biya, was sworn in for an 8th term as president. Several NGOs report about 40 deaths and thousands of arrests, though these figures have not been officially confirmed. Opposition candidate Issa Chiroma Bakari, who still insists Biya's victory is fraudulent, is demanding the government releases all arrested within 48 hours. The ruling party, though, maintains that these arrests were made in an attempt to maintain public order. Indira Ayuk reports from Yaoundé.
Opposition candidate and runner-up of the just concluded October 12 presidential polls in Cameroon, Issa Chiroma Bakari, has given the newly sworn-in Biya regime 48 hours to unconditionally release hundreds of protesters nabbed in different cities across the country in the wake of post-electoral unrest. Speaking for the first time since long-serving President Paul Biya took an oath of service before the National Assembly, Chiroma warned that the regime will bear the consequences of what will happen if those detained are not released by Tuesday, November 11. A group of lawyers defending those arrested say at least 2,000 arrests were made across the country. These figures have not been confirmed by the government authorities, but for the ruling CPDM party, the arrests serve as a means of maintaining order to prevent looting and acts of vandalism. The FSNC candidate, whose whereabouts are not known for about a week now, denounces what he calls state-sponsored gangsterism and persecution of racially motivated individuals. He has, in the meantime, continued to insist that he won the October 12 presidential elections.
The daughter of South Africa's former president Jacob Zuma has pleaded not guilty to incitement to commit terrorism and public violence over deadly riots in 2021 that left over 300 people dead. 43-year-old Duduzile Zuma Sambudla is accused of encouraging others to commit violence via online posts 4 years ago. She and her supporters claim the case is politically motivated. The protests erupted after her father was arrested for disobeying a court order to testify at a corruption inquiry, and his jailing sparked riots in what's considered the deadliest period of unrest since the end of apartheid. As the rhythms of Africa continue to shape global music, one band from Senegal has stood the test of time. For more than 50 years, Orchestra Baobab has embodied the elegance and soul of West African sound, blending traditional Senegalese rhythms with Afro-Cuban grooves. At Paris's legendary Olympia venue, the group returned to celebrate its legacy and pass the torch to a new generation. This as part of a European tour for the whole month of November. Olivia Bizo brings us this report.
From Dakar to Paris, their sound has travelled decades. A fusion of Wolof, Mandingue and Cuban influences that captured the spirit of Senegal's independence. Today, the band combines founding members with younger musicians.
C'est la continuation, bien sûr.
Of course, it's a continuation. It doesn't stop us from playing the old songs. We still do. But we have something to show the world, that this music continues. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary, and now we want the next generation to carry the torch.
The youth are using that torch to share the music on social media, connecting listeners around the world.
Our generation wants to explore the past and dig into the roots of the music. That's why so many of these older tracks are reappearing on platforms like TikTok.
Blending artists from across the continent, Orchestra Baobab has long stood for unity through music. For this specialist, their endurance is about more than nostalgia. It highlights the power of African artists to be heard on their own terms.
We now understand the essence of African urban music. For a long time, it was often misunderstood as being only dance music. But these artists have exposed politicians, corruption, and other issues in their countries. They are always on the front line, showing the world what is really happening at home.
This season, Orchestra Baobab is sharing their music with audiences in nearly 20 European cities, while preparing a new album, Made in Senegal, due to be released in March 2026.
And finally, a larger-than-life parade marched through the streets of the Malian capital, celebrating the 9th year of the annual Puppet Festival. Marionettes have long held cultural importance in Mali, used traditionally to tell stories and pass on wisdom. It was a glimmer of joy and colour for residents, as the fuel blockade there has brought the capital to its knees as businesses struggle to survive and employees cannot get to work. Let's hear now from some locals on how the festival impacted them.
The history of puppetry in Mali is ancient, stretching back centuries. Our ancestors used puppets to communicate and teach children about our culture. It has always been an ancestral tool, and today I continue to use it for communication, education, and to showcase Malian art.
These are difficult times. Events like this help us forget our worries, whether it's security issues, the fuel crisis, or other challenges. So whenever we have occasions like this, it's truly a positive thing.
And that concludes our programme. Thank you for watching Eye on Africa, and stay tuned to France 24.